for that. And welcome, Archel.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
so to start off, why don't you give us a little background on your entrepreneurial journey from mango rags to the Bombshell Factory?
All right. Mango Rags was the first accidental business because I moved to Liberia to be Oprah and it didn't work. But I was filming all these things and I was making great clothes. People wanted to buy my clothes. And honestly, especially the Georgia Tech community, they don't know many people who leave Georgia Tech and just go to Africa. And so everybody always celebrated everything that I did. I feel like I've just always been surrounded by so many people who just wanted to be a part of the bigger movement, the bigger picture. So I started off selling dresses in the back of my pickup truck. After a year, I opened Mango Rags, and then a year later, we had to close down. And when I came back to Atlanta to kind of figure things out, it was a very interesting time because I came back to Atlanta, and that was the first time I ever Uber or Lyft. Most people can't pinpoint the first time they heard about any of these apps, but it was
Right.
like Tinder was brand new, Uber was brand new, Lyft was brand new. And these were the apps that were kind of shaping the way that we were
Mm,
moving and doing things. And I knew then that I needed to think bigger than just a store that served me. And even if I couldn't create an app, what could I do that could really help people around me live their lives? So I was in America for 6 months while I waited for Ebola to end. And at a certain point, I just got tired and I was like, we know how to be safe. So I went back to Liberia, even though Ebola was still in the country. And I started construction on the factory because we're at a point now, especially in this 2020, where we have to know that businesses can't be selfish businesses. And so I really need to think how I could use what we had going on for what was going well for my store. How could I use that to elevate more people? So we launched on Kickstarter, and because so many people, again, were so supportive and behind me with doing the good work, we were able to raise almost $70,000 on Kickstarter. And that's how we started the factory. And so we've been in business now, good times and bad. We've been in business now 2016. So it's a blessing.
wow. Indeed, that's beautiful. I really love like the come up story. A lot of times people see the glimmer and glam of it all and they're like, "Oh yeah, you just do it." But it's a whole entire process in every way. And you mentioned it's funny that you mentioned there's no room for selfish business. And you've said that quote before in one of your other interviews. And I think that statement hits harder than ever in this year. I think a lot of people have realized that they can't be as selfish, that they can't be alone, and that you need that community. So when have you caught yourself running into that selfish business? You hit on that a little bit then from the transition from Mango Rags, coming back to America, realizing, and then going back to Liberia. But when was that moment that you caught yourself running into that selfish business, and how were you able to recognize that? And then what did you do to become less selfish and more selfless?
Well, when I opened Mango Rags, it was for me. It was I wanted nice clothes and I couldn't afford to hire anybody to make them. And, we don't have malls in Nigeria. It's all tailor shops. And so the beauty of Mango Rags is my friends would come order a dress. And then with the money from that dress, at least I could make another dress for myself. I could sell two more. I could, you know what I mean? And I really just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be this girl. I don't know how many. I'm looking at the attendees' names and my name when it shows up in a roll call, especially if my family came to America as refugees. So I've always felt a little bit like an outsider, like I didn't belong. And Mango Rags made me the cool fashion girl. So it was selfish because it was something I had never felt before and I wanted to feel. But at the same time, I brought nobody along with me for that ride. And so, once you feel it, it's fine. But then once you recognize that you've got to make those shifts, it's important that we dig deep and make those changes.
And that you touched on something I was literally going to follow up on of like, what do you advise others to do? But I think that recognition of you are pouring back into yourself. When it is your craft, it is tapping onto yourself. But how do you give back to others then? So that was beautiful. Thank you.
I
Um,
also think so much of
so
it has to do with you recognizing, like, let's say you wanted to start a business right now. Even if you didn't really
right.
have compassion, you need to know that you have to do this at least just to look good in the history books in the future. If that's the most shallow reason, help somebody so at least you look good in the future. Because when I started this company, there weren't that many social good businesses. There were a handful, but not
Mm,
that many. Now, when you watch Shark Tank, everybody's donating a portion of something. Everybody's doing a 1-for-1 or whatever. And some of these models I think are more beneficial than others. But really and truly, figure
mhm.
out what yours is going to be. Figure out what your give back is going to be. Because I just don't believe that the karma is good for businesses that are just fully selfish at this point in time. I think that
Right.
you can go far, but you won't go far for long, and then you'll fall hard.
Woo. Oh, I froze on the last part. I promise I heard it. Then it just froze. But that's really good, great advice on giving back, pouring out, and pinpointing like your strengths and playing off of that into your own craft instead of pretending to be like something. It's more straining in that way. Um, so I kind of want to touch on that in regards to impact. Um, you speak to this a lot, quite often, of making impact in your smaller circles to then echo into larger spaces. So making impact where you can. So kind of sharing from your own business of how you do that, and then what is worth for other entrepreneurs to invest in that line of thought.
Yeah, I think I can only control what I can control. And so when we first started that year, I think we had maybe 10 women who were working for us, and people would meet me and be like, I want you to have 30 women, or I want you to have more women. And the truth is, I've seen organizations that have hired a ton of women and that can then say, 50 women have come through my program and blah, blah, blah. But how much have their lives actually changed? And I think that I want to
Mm,
change your quality of life when you come and work with me, rather than just saying for a short period of time you earn some money. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
if you have to pay for, like, we have one employee who, she's in college and she has 4 years of school to pay for. You know what I mean? I don't want her to pay for, only be able to pay for one semester and then tease her with an education. That's crazy. It's more important to me that we make lasting change, and also if somebody is not worried about if they'll be making money this time next year, they'll be more focused on doing a good job with what they've got right now. So for me, I know that I work in fashion. I know that I like to work with women, and I know that I'm from Liberia, which is one of the poorest countries in the world. I don't need to necessarily be trying to do as much as I can everywhere that I can. In the small ways, I can be helpful. So with our store opening
Mhm.
in Ponce City Market on October 7th, we're hiring a team of all refugees because I'm a refugee. And I know what that means, and I know what that can look like, and I know that that can somewhat feel isolated. But that is my small way, right? We might only have 2 employees for now,
Mhm.
but that's my little small way of saying I can help.
Wow. Wow. I hope everyone is tuning in and listening to these gems because this is really good. I'm really impressed by your morals and values as a person and as a business owner as well. Um, and I want to touch on that small impact, but in a whole different direction. I love how you use your clothing to tell stories and like empower people through your clothing. So how did this philosophy show up for you? You touched on you wanted to be West African Oprah. And how is it related to your clothing business? I know you mentioned you want to do like pop-up shop to be more intimate with people. So again, to that smaller impact, how do you envision that? And how's that experience been?
So I feel, with the Oprah thing, when I was in school, I interned at Channel 2. I interned for magazines. I used to do red carpets and things like that. And I just always felt nervous and I never felt comfortable. And so I found that being behind the scenes and actually talking to people, not for show, but for real, like what are the things that you're going through and how can I help you? That was more of what I was looking for. So initially it was just, I thought I wanted to meet all kinds of people. And I do meet all kinds of people, but just not in that sort of like Hollywood glamour way, which is much more for me genuine.
Yeah. Wow. So, quick question. This is off. I'm kind of freestyling on this one right
Go
here.
ahead.
But for those that buy your clothing, is there a way that you kind of circle back and hear those stories? Do people ever come back to you with testimonies, and how does that impact you?
Lots of people do. We had actually a great conversation over the creation, and we tagged back to some of our customers. A lot of the customers who were in the conversation bought our clothing, not just been like, some of them I had gifted them clothing before and they wore it and they felt great, and some of them have been longtime
Yeah.
customers, and we wanted that good mix because when you wear our clothes, you're out there as a warrior for us, you're a champion for us. You're showing that it's important who makes the clothes as much as like what I'm wearing, and it's as big a part of me feeling good in what I'm wearing
Right.
as just how it looks. So I think we stay pretty tight with our customers. Social media has really been a game changer for us, and I'm so grateful that our customers tag us in their pics, especially mask pics. Right now, we're sticking to like a mask feed until we open the store, and then we'll start to do other things as well. But we see all the different lifestyles that our customers live, and it's important because for a long time, African clothing was only for a certain type of Black person, and now we want to show that this is exceptional
Yeah.
for everybody. So, I really appreciate that that is our mission, making sure that people know they can get something nice quality and that's
Yeah.
beautiful, that they'll love, and they don't just have to be a Black woman in order to wear African clothing, and they can just be like a Brooklyn beer brewer, or they can just be like we also had like this beautiful white woman who is a blogger, walking the streets in her Ruth mask, inside her African cloth mask on the other. Like, you are a champion for us, and that's important.
Mm. Yes. No, also, side note, you all, please check out the Bombshell Factory website. It's phenomenal. And the Instagram as well. It's great treat. Um, so touched on this. Deciphering between appropriation and appreciation is kind of what I want to touch on that note.
Yeah.
Um, and spreading the joy of like a culture. But how do you communicate with your customers of, be that ambassador? Don't adopt a culture as your own, but appreciate it and elevate it and be a part of it in a way that's within your own respects.
I think that the big key when it comes to appropriation is people tend to wear things that are considered of a culture in costume. And what I want you to do is find ways to integrate these pieces into your normal wardrobe. So I don't want you to just save it for when it's Halloween. I want you to wear your nice skirt when you're going to a nice event because you are
Yeah.
happy to you're literally putting the women who make these clothes in rooms that they will never be in. And it's important. We have to have people who speak up for us in environments that we will never be in. Like, that's the only way that we can grow. You know what I mean? And we can't have a double standard about fashion that if it's European, it's for everybody, but if it's African, it's only for a few. We have to celebrate it because it's not just like I'm only French people are wearing Louis Vuitton. It's not like that. So I think it's just super important for our ambassadors, our champions, our bombshells all over. When they're wearing something, they wear it with pride, and all of our purchases come with a card that tells them who made what. So they're wearing something with pride, and they're telling people the story of the woman who made their garment. That's important because if not
Yeah.
for them, we would never be in those spaces and rooms.
Wow. I love the way you phrased and differentiated the two. I think that's a hard hard line to walk on for a lot of people. I know even for myself, that was a hard line coming from a Jamaican background. So, thank you for that.
What do
And it
you
looks
feel
like we
about
have a few
how
questions
does it
coming.
work for you?
Oh,
Or in your opinion, what do you think?
wow. So for me, I'm along the same lines as you. Like I want to share in the culture and I want to indulge, and I think that's what the world is about, like sharing and bringing this community, fostering community. We often see connections from different cultures and different backgrounds that people never could have imagined. I think that's the most beautiful thing to witness. Um, but it's also the timing and the intention of why you're wearing it and the actions behind why, all of those things matter. I think that's where intentions come in. And often in the Jamaican culture, what I see is that, people go to Jamaica, put on this facade, put on the clothing, and they're making a joke of this point. It becomes disrespectful. Um, so
Yeah,
it's a tough line. But it
I
all goes
think
back to questioning
people
self.
of color, we're used to having things taken from us. And I think that that's a very sincere
Mm-hmm.
feeling to have and to experience. But the thing is, whether or not we're a part of it, things will still be taken from us. So we might as well be on the forefront. We might as well create the ways to do so respectfully because we'll find that
Mm.
we have more sisters, more friends, more supporters than we have thieves, honestly. We just have to create a way and an opportunity to make these sorts of inroads just free flowing.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. You're giving me a lot to chew on, so I will follow back to follow up discussion, tea time. Um,
Yeah.
um, I want to get some questions in from the audience. We have a lot of good questions. So we know a lot about systemic racism in the U.S. How does racism and inequity manifest in Liberia?
Well, so Liberia has a very interesting history, and I encourage anybody who is American to check it out for real because Liberia was founded by freed American slaves. My ancestors are the same as any uh, African American. My family just decided to go back to Africa, and that's where they settled. So when these freed slaves went to Liberia, unfortunately, they oppressed the native Liberians. So my family came to America again because of a coup. Because the truth is, and that's when we talk about selfish businesses and things, if you're not doing things that are for the good of all, you will not last. You will rise, you can rise, but you will not last. And so we've seen it in that way. And Liberia went from being one of the wealthiest, the places where people came for goods and came for hospitals and came for schools, to now being consistently bottom 10 poorest countries in the world. And that's a very, very
Mm,
interesting thing to observe, because my parents experienced this great Liberia, and I've
mm,
never seen it. I've gone to other countries and been like, why can't we be like this? And the truth is because we
mm.
did not start off with kindness. And if you don't start off with kindness, you're not going to last long. So
That's a word.
yeah, and so it has manifested in, so racism, not so much because Liberia is a black country. I will say that we have most of our business people, most of the successful business people in Liberia now are Lebanese and Indian.
Mm,
And so that is also a hard thing for most Liberians to see. Imagine looking around and anybody who's doing well in business does not look like
mm,
And then if you are an indigenous Liberian, at some point you were looking around and nobody who was doing well in government or who owned the country sounded like you because they were all American
mm,
educated and you got a Liberian degree. So Liberia is a very interesting country. Our history is unlike any other because we weren't colonized. When you talk about the race to Africa,
mhm.
race for Africa, I think is what they call it. Liberia was not colonized, but it's something that I really encourage people if they're interested in. There's lots of stuff on the internet that just breaks down what happened and why certain things, injustices like that, should not happen again.
Wow. Never knew actually. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I will be deep diving. Um, I want to raise another question. You mentioned working with refugees for your new store. What are some of the organizations in Atlanta you collaborate with, especially in the refugee space? And how important is it for you to collaborate with others serving in the same space as you are?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel. I think that's something that a lot of people do when they see there's an issue. They're like, I'm going to start an organization and fix that problem. And the truth is, sometimes some people have just been at this for a while. So I
Mm-hmm.
like to just grab what you've got and let's see how we can grow. I think collaboration is the best currency. So what we did was we found a headhunter who works specifically with placing refugees. And, I had a conversation actually with a Georgia Tech grad. I'm not going to call his name out, but I was telling him that we plan to hire refugees for the store. And he was like,
Mm-hmm.
going to have, what about jobs for Atlantans? Are you going to have offer jobs for Atlantans? And I was like, the fact that people don't know that there are refugees who are Atlantans, that's a problem, And so all of this is the stereotypes. But we found a recruitment company, and the name is escaping me right now, but they specifically place refugees. And I think that when people hear me speak and, meet me and see my resume and my education, they don't know like that I would consider myself part of the refugee community. But that's the beauty of it. So when you come into our store, you'll have probably, girls that go to Georgia State that just like fashion and want to work around fashion, but their parents happen to have fled with them, from
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. So, it's I'm really excited and proud about that part of our company.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm a pause for a second and give you a little demographic background of who's listening in. Um,
Okay.
so we have Georgia Tech faculty and staff, about like 41% of our audience right now, so a good percentage. And then 29% grad students, 24% undergrad, and then we have a Georgia Tech fan in the audience. So shout out to the Georgia Tech
Yeah.
fan out there. um, so we have two good questions I want to raise. So the
Cool.
love the collaboration as currency mantra. What advice would you give to new entrepreneurs to find collaborators? That's a really good question.
Yeah, I think DM people, send emails. I don't want to use the word stalking, but when I see somebody who's doing something that I really think is cool and I want to get to know them, if they're having a pop up, I'm going so that I can meet them. And that has led to usually more relationships than just the one.
Mm,
If I am to be honest about the way I got the Pond City Market store, it involved a little bit of internet stalking as well because I was seeing people who I wanted to get to know, who I had no real way of like interacting with them. So I was just kind of following them, liking their pics, commenting on captions, and then, like I would gift them a dress and be like, I heard you mention that you really are interested in XYZ. So we
mm,
make this at our factory. I thought you might like it. And sure enough, when George Floyd was murdered, I reached out
mm-hmm,
to this person from Ponce that I had been following for at that point maybe 6 months, and I was like, "Hey, I'd be interested in having a store at Ponce City Market, but honestly, I never thought I never saw any store owners that looked like me, and I never, is this something that we could talk about?" And she was like, "Absolutely, I'm free tomorrow," and made the appointment. And it was like within 24 hours, I had
wow,
that. But the most important thing about that was when we got on the call, and it was me, her, and two others. And we got on the call because I had already gifted her a dress or whatever. And we got on the call, and she was like, and her clothes, she's being modest, but her clothes are so beautiful. I have this one dress from her, and it was amazing. And so, really and truly, when it comes to like collaborating and really getting things out there, you just kind of have to know what you want and just continue to go after it.
mm,
So we have a
yeah,
collaboration coming up with Atlanta Influences Everything, where we'll be doing the tie-dye shirts that I have, and then they'll be stamping their logo on it, and that way we get their followers to come in, we get my clients to come in, and my clients will learn about their brand will learn that I'm there, and I'm serious about being a person of color in Pond City Market and kind of changing the way people see the neighborhood, But
mm-hmm,
it's all because I just like I like what you're doing and I would love for us to work together. And here's how it makes sense. And especially if you have the opportunity to help people make money together, then people can really start to listen.
The power of connection. I know you were around the word stalking, and I understand what you're what you're saying. I call it Hawkeyes.
Okay, that's nice.
Like
That's nice.
typically, yeah, we can dance around another term, but yeah, I call it Hawkeyes. Because there's some great people. And I know
Yeah,
like you're definitely one. There's an amazing alumni from Georgia Tech. I'm like, take full advantage.
yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
um, So we have another one in, and it's a kudos to you as well. So what are you doing? Oh, what you're doing, Archel, is so inspiring. Thank you for being here today. I want to know if the Bombshell Factory works with the impact investment funds and whether these funds add value to your business and help you further your goals.
While we have not worked with any investment funds, we have just grown the business the old fashioned way. We crowdfunded. I'm a really big
Mm,
person of we don't really need a handout. Could use a little help, but we don't need handouts.
mm,
So I'm always looking for opportunities for us to sell, and we don't overextend ourselves. If we can't afford something, we can't afford it. We
mm,
keep working until we can make enough money to do it. Having said that, I recognize the need for so many types of funding. And honestly, I think a large part of the reason that we haven't received a lot of impact funding is because it takes a lot of time to just like to be applying for things. And I'm right now the one person show, but I'm learning to delegate. There's a lot of things that are going into us
but
opening this pond. Yeah, there's a lot because I also want to make sure that anybody who works with me respects what we've got going on. I look at the work that I do and I recognize that if I don't do my job, there's about 10 families that can't feed themselves, can't go to school, that are really
mm,
going to suffer if I don't do what I'm supposed to do. And so, yes, there's pressure there and saying like, yeah, you actually have to do the work, but also I need to know that anybody who works with us respects the fact that we're not running a
mhm,
charity here. There are people who are reliant on us for their bread and butter, and it's something that they earn. So, but as we
mm,
continue to grow, things will change because we do want to be huge, and I do want to be able to help more
right.
people. I want to be able to transform lives at a deeper level. So we'll continue to seek different opportunities, but for now, no other investment.
Oh, I love the vision. I love it. We'll stay tuned for it. And I had a question following up, but I want to allow space for the audience. Could you speak a little about the challenges you face starting a business in your home country, having grown up in the U.S.? My family left South Africa when I was young, and I'm interested in following a path like yours.
Very, very interesting question. I would be super interested also whoever you are because South Africa is a very interesting country. There's a lot of I went to South Africa. It was kind of uncomfortable as a person of color, right? And so there's so much work that needs to be done. And I think that something that's so important is that we go into these spaces with an open mind, you know? I grew up in America, so I'm going to Liberia, and I'm not used to a lot of the ways that they do business, or that the fact that journalism is pay journalism. So it's like if you want a story covered, you're paying somebody. Whereas here, journalism is there's not supposed to be an exchange of money. Well, we see how that goes with the news, but there's so many differences, and you just have to sit back and listen and not look at well, where I'm from, this is how this went. Or, well, what worked for me over here. You have to literally sit back and then also not walking in saying what all the problems are. Because some of the things that are different
Mm,
are things that you need to get used to. It doesn't mean that anybody wants to change. It's
right.
very interesting. That first year I had to learn a lot. I offended quite a few people on my journey to understanding that I needed to be quiet and listen more than I needed to talk. I don't know how to stop talking. So it was hard, but I'd say my best advice is go and sit and listen and allow the people to tell you what they need rather than walking in and deciding what you think they need.
That's huge. That's huge. I think that can be applied. not only to that specific motive, but anywhere you go into a new space, just sit and listen and observe the space,
Yeah,
take it all in.
absolutely.
I love
I think
that.
that's also why this anti-racism work is so important right now, is because it's involving people sitting and listening, not telling us what's the problem with Black
Mhm.
communities, but listening to what we feel the problems are with Black communities. Do you know what I mean? When they say, oh, you should comply with the police,
Exactly.
we're saying we need to stop being over policed. You know what I'm saying? You can't see
Mhm.
that if you don't live in it. So it doesn't allow you to create a proper or well formed opinion about what we actually need.
Exactly. I can literally stay here and be on a whole soapbox about that alone. Um, but yeah, I'm glad the wake up call is apparent, and hopefully it's easier moving forward and more
Yeah.
good comes out of it. Uh,
Yeah.
so we have one last question. You touched on
Okay.
the importance of having real and long-term impact in the lives of women you're working with. What are some of the impact metrics that you track or watch to know you're going the right direction? Really good question as well.
We're small, so, and I recognize that, like, that's a very Georgia Tech question. Like, what are the metrics? We're very small. So if I do home visits annually, I'll go sit with you at your house and what's going on, what's changed. So we'll say that when the
Mhm.
economy was good and our company was doing really well locally in Liberia, and the economy was good, we had a lot of Liberian customers. I went to one of our employees' houses, and her mother sells Kool-Aid in the market. She
Mm.
she mixes, like, it's just Kool-Aid, and she keeps it in a freezer, and she walks around the market with her frozen Kool-Aid, and she sells it. And so she was fixing like a shed to the side of the house where people could
Yeah.
come and shop with her. So things were looking up. But then I returned a year later, and the economy, we had changed presidents, the economy had slowed down, and so, she had stopped
Mm.
construction on her shed. She no longer had power, so she was no longer able to freeze the Kool-Aid that she was selling, which means that she's spending more money on ice to keep the Kool-Aid cool, but it's still not as cold, so she's not making as much money, so her business is slow. So for me, at that point, I'm seeing that and I'm saying, okay, we need to find a way for my employee to make more money to make up for what her mother is losing because her Kool-Aid business isn't growing. So we don't have metrics. We do it the a very a way that people of color do things. We just go sit at your house and kind of see what the problems are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's also for me another reason why I love being small is because I can still go to the house and I'm not a stranger at their home. You know what I mean? They recognize that
Mhm.
I live somewhere else and I travel and I do all this stuff. But when it comes to the heart of it, like sometimes people aren't going to tell you what they need, right? Especially people who live, who are from a background of poverty, who are for the first time earning enough to pay rent. They're not going to say anything. But when I go to, there's another bombshell who I go visit, and I went and visited her, and her apartment, it's leaky. The roof is leaky. She doesn't need to live there, but she's not going to tell me that she does not live in a good place because she's proud that she's able to pay
Mm.
rent for this place that she has. And I'm like, okay, what do we need in order to get you to a place that's nicer? Do I need to
Right.
spend, and it's not much ever, just incrementally, like, okay, we need to make sure that you have enough so that you don't have to worry about water coming in your ceiling. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I don't have metrics. I just go and I sit and I listen.
It's felt. I love that compassion. And that intimacy, because I truly believe the connection is felt when it's there. Um, great
Yeah.
answer. I lied. There's another question.
Oh.
um, if you could have all the funding needed to expand your business into a new line of product, what would it be?
Woo. I really want us to create some sort of biodegradable container for water, for drinking
Ooh.
water. Because here in America, this whole, and honestly, the hardest thing for me has been letting go of single-use plastic bottles, because I just, I like water bottles. But I would like, in Liberia, you cannot drink the water. It's not
Mhm.
potable. So everybody has to use, well, they call them plastic sachets. So it's just a plastic bag that you
Right.
fill up with water, or that is filled with the water, and everybody's drinking it. And because waste management is not serious there, people are just throwing these plastics on so you have this beautiful,
Mm.
lush, green Africa, right? That looks just like everything that you could picture. And then there's like piles of plastic trash there. So if I
Mm.
could create something, it would be a better way, biodegradable way, a quickly biodegradable way for us to drink our water. But that's also the problem, right? Because what's out there as far as biodegradables, the water corrodes it. So,
Mm. It's a challenge. I
yeah, it's
so
a challenge. We need to fix that.
Interesting idea. This is a pitch to you from me. Have you
Okay.
ever thought about going back into like investing back into Georgia Tech and tapping into those creative minds we have? Because we have new programs like Create X. Cool. Oh, here's me listing it off. VIP, other research that literally would love to impact people socially in this way. Um,
I I would
so
love
that's just me
to.
pitching. I know.
Yeah. I love to
Yeah.
work with Georgia Tech. I'm on the board of trustees for the Alumni Association. Anytime somebody reaches out and says you want to do this or you want to do that, I always try to make myself available for any sort of talks or anything like that. I would love to work with Georgia Tech
Yeah.
students, but again, we're small, right? We don't really have the
Right.
money
Right.
to sort it out, and then I don't have the time to sort out what I don't have the money to sort out. So it's like so hard because it's like, well, what do you chase? You know what I mean? What
Exactly.
specifically do you chase to have the best impact you can have? And so I think also though, as I continue to move forward with what I've got going on, the
Yeah.
people who might have similar interests will align. Will align. Because all I can do is keep putting myself out there and then hoping that somebody
Yeah.
will find me too and I find them and we can collaborate and create, new ways to do amazing things.
I feel that. I love that. Um, well, we are at time, but I have one final very important question for you. Um,
Okay.
how can we become better informed and take action in our personal and professional lives to promote social and racial justice?
Is this the task
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to? Okay, all
That is
right,
a big
okay.
task.
I'm like, is this code for the the last
So, big
question?
point. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, blink twice if I'm supposed to if it's time. Okay. Um, the thing I want people to do is really prioritize shopping with a Black business at least twice a week. It is so easy to get stuck in our routines. Like there's a there. I'm driving around town. I'm going to go stop for food, and I'm always going to stop at Chick-fil-A or. Well, I'm not always going to stop at Chick-fil-A, but if I am going to stop at Chick-fil-A, there is a Black-owned one on MLK. So how far out of the way could
Mm.
that be? Or, and the other thing too is when you do, you have to be prepared to do this with an open mind because Black owned businesses are different. You know what I mean? You're not just going in and seeing somebody who has nothing to do with the restaurant or, or the shop or the auto shop or whatever it is that you choose to buy Black. You're going to get some flavor. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're going to wait for your food. Sometimes you're going to, there's going to be a variation and whatever. I want us to see these things as special. Like these are people who are in our
Yeah.
community. You know what I mean? And so when I've been going to Mangoes on the West End Mangoes a lot
Love
I
mango.
really like their chicken. And when I go, it's like it's always I've been a fan of Mangoes for over a decade. Between the Auburn Avenue one and the other one, and sometimes you go and you'll have a great experience. Other times you will not. But the difference is you're still at a Black business. So you just, would you
Mhm.
tell your mom to hurry up? No. So, go there with an open mind and no judgment, but make it a point to do at least two a week because you'd be surprised what your new favorite things are and how much it matters to keeping the community strong. So that's the task.